Hey everyone, Ryan here. I want to talk about Biomutant today. Now, it's no secret that Biomutant didn't exactly set the world on fire, nor did it set me on fire, which I'm kind of happy about because I go out of my way to not be set on fire. Not that I've ever tried it. I just imagine it's painful. You know, you knew that. I didn't need to say that. But yeah, Biomutant wasn't exactly a smash hit that I was hoping for in terms of its critical reception. I did say that in my own review that while I did knock it quite a bit for not being as great as I was hoping it would be, that there would be a small portion of the audience, or rather a portion of the audience, I should say, that would really like this game. And I do think that that is the case here. So normally what I would do in these kind of videos, I would come out with the patch notes and I would show it up on screen here, and I would tell you about what's getting updated and what would be better and give you a little analysis. But today I thought I would do something a little different. Today what I want to do is I want to talk about two things that make this game objectively much easier and better to play post-launch. So without further ado, let's get into it. First, obviously it wouldn't be a YouTube video if I didn't ask you to subscribe, so why don't you do that? And now let's get into it. An introduction can make or break a game, because in that introduction sequence you have to set up all the stakes, or at least give the player the tools that they need to understand the game. And if it takes a while to get going, like 5-10 hours, it's going to turn off a lot of people who either don't have the time or don't have the patience to go through that and wait for a game to get 5 hours in before it gets good. That's why I think it's critically important that a game has a really good intro in a lot of ways. Biomutant has this weird kind of introduction sequence that takes about 2 to 3 hours. So it's not that long, but the problem with it is that even after those 2 to 3 hours, it's still kind of handholdy for a very long portion of time. Something that I thought would go massively towards improving the game is either cutting out that intro or reducing it, or kind of maybe on a new playthrough it was optional of sorts, right? Not a New Game Plus playthrough. I know you skip the intro in the New Game Plus playthrough, but at least in a new playthrough with a new character, you could skip it if you've already experienced it. So Experiment 101 went to the drawing board and did a kind of compromise position to my position. Not that we were like negotiating or anything, just that they went to the drawing board and they kind of went and they abbreviated and cut down a lot of the dialogue. So that way it goes a lot quicker and smoother, and it's snappier and it's not as drawn out. For example, there's a part where you go down and you go to grab something for best before in a flashback. And what originally was is you walk down this long winding pathway, you walk all the way up to them, and you're a little dude, so you're walking very slowly. But now what happens is it's a lot shorter of a walk back and forth, so that segment is cut down significantly. So what happens is an intro that was normally 2 to 3 hours long, and even after that still had more introductory stuff to give you, is now about 45 minutes to an hour long. And it doesn't really harm the story in any way, in my opinion at least, and I think that that's a good thing. It just tells you that maybe it didn't need to be that long if it still works the way it does, and I think that goes a long way towards improving the game and making it easier for new players and players coming back to just kind of get through the intro of the game and then get into the good stuff, which is obviously the meat of it is doing quests and wanting to travel the world and fighting with the warring tribes and what have you. So yeah, as I said, they removed some of the dialogue or abbreviated other parts, so it wasn't as long. Your mileage on the story may vary as to whether you enjoy it or not, but I didn't find it super compelling, so that's why I generally don't have an issue with that. Even something as simple as allowing the player to get through dialogue a bit quicker than before, where not as much gibberish will be said before the narrator cuts in, or you're able to see what they're saying and respond, makes for a big improvement to the overall pacing of the game, but especially to those crucial opening hours that matter so much, in my opinion. Now, I know not everyone is going to like the updates or appreciate them cutting stuff out like dialogue, but my experience is that it does make the game more digestible and easier to access for new players, or like I said, returning players who maybe want to try a new character or roll with a new class without having the encumbrance of going through such a long introduction. Part of me still wants them to add in the option of skipping the tutorial section, at least the part where you're in the bunker when you do start a new game if you've already experienced it before, but that's just something that I want and probably not a lot of other people want. So I guess I can just keep dreaming, huh? So that's number one. Number two is something that I think was always going to be hit or miss depending on who you talk to, is the combat. Now the combat itself for me was kind of lackluster. It wasn't bad by any means, but it wasn't as punchy or as powerful, or it didn't make you feel like you were a true Wung Fu or Kung Fu Fury master of Fury Kung Fu-ness. Something that I thought that they needed to add, which I thought would help the game immensely in terms of pacing of the combat, in terms of crowd control, will be a lock-on system. What you had before was a kind of loose lock-on system that didn't really kind of obey you at times, and you had to like fight with the game at times, and it made the combat feel a lot looser than it does. Now, what they did is they added in a lock-on button for melee combat in Biomutant. That's also gonna be hit or miss for people, but I think it makes combat that is not as great as it could have been, or as punchy and I guess as tight as you wanted it to be, as I wanted it to be, I should say. It makes it infinitely better, and it makes it a lot easier to kind of control the crowds. I played it for about an hour or two, so I'm going to be honest with you and say up front that I don't know how much this is going to help maybe new players or players who've already been playing and been struggling with combat get into it. But I think what it does is it adds in just a little bit more control into combat that really just needed a little bit more control when it came to the characters in the world, at least in terms of combat, I mean. Now, I did say two things, but just to give you an honorable mention, something that I think is again going to be hit or miss for people is the narrator. Now, I'm going to tell you, the narrator, you're going to hear them no matter what, whatever capacity, even if you put it down all the way to 0. They did add in an update that you can mute the narrator entirely. So when the narrator talks, it is only for very, very specific segments. Otherwise, your experience is just mumbled gibberish, or you're just seeing text, which I think myself, I probably will continue playing with that option on, only because their narrator is not necessarily as bad as like a Crackdown game where the narrator will not stop telling you what to do, but it is annoying enough, at least for me, that I wasn't a big fan of the narrator. Now, I'm sure a narrator was probably cheaper for them in terms of a voice acting thing. They only had to pay one voice actor, but it is just kind of hit or miss in a lot of ways. In some games, they can kind of get away with having a narrator. Again, I wasn't a big fan of the narrator personally. I thought it was fine. I didn't really find it super annoying, but there are times where you're just kind of like, dude, shut up. I'm doing something. I'm in an open world game. Leave me the hell alone. And there's a multitude of other things that, of course, contribute to this game just being a lot better overall, like bug fixes and whatnot. But those are two major things and one honorable mention that I think go a long way towards making the experience of playing Biomutant just better overall and more fun, and also just make it so that way new players and returning players will just have a better experience going into it. I don't know if I'd still recommend buying the game at $60, but I think if you can get this game on a sale, I think it's a really solid buy, and I'm really do look forward to talking about the game more as more updates roll out, and maybe we'll do another one of these, or we'll talk about more if there's any expansions or maybe DLC and stuff like that. But I want to get your thoughts now. I want to toss all the discussion to you. Is there other updates that you're looking for from Biomutant? Is there other things that maybe they fixed that you kind of wish they didn't? Do you like these updates? Do you think that they're doing a good job? Now, again, I will say, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. Be honest. And subscribe if you like the content. If you want to see more stuff like this, or you want to see some stuff that is not like this, subscribe. Again, subscribe to the channel if you like it. Anyway, I'm going to stop saying subscribe. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you all soon, and I love you all. Maybe.